be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. The apostles gathered together with Jesus and reported all they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." People were coming and going in great numbers, and they had no opportunity even to eat. So they went off in a boat by themselves to a deserted place. People saw them leaving, and many came to know about it. They hastened there on foot from all the towns and arrived at the place before them. When he disembarked and saw the vast crowd, his heart was moved with pity for them, for they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So in today's first reading from the book of Jeremiah, God tells us that woe to the shepherds who mislead and scatter the flock of my pasture. He says, "You've scattered my sheep and driven them away. You have not cared for them. And I will take care to punish your evil deeds. I myself will gather the scattered sheep and bring them back to the meadow." And then he promises Jeremiah that he'll raise up a righteous shoot from David, who shall reign and govern wisely, shall do what is right in the land, and shall dwell in security. The land will dwell in security, and he will be called the Lord our justice. So the first reading we know is fulfilled in Jesus, the Good Shepherd, the Lord of justice, who guides his sheep and really continues to guide his sheep through his church. You know, as Catholics, we understand that Jesus founded his church, and he promised that the gates of hell will never prevail against the church. And he governs his flock down through the ages. You know, the ecclesiastical structure of the church has been there from the very beginning. You know, bishops, priests, deacons. St. Ignatius of Antioch, one of the early fathers of the church, he was actually Bishop of Antioch, but he was a direct disciple of John the Apostle. And we have his letters intact that he wrote. And in his letters, he's on the way to Rome to be fed to the lions. And it's pretty amazing. He wrote these wonderful letters to the different churches. And he talks about the structure of the church, what we call the ecclesiastical hierarchy, the bishops, priests, deacons. He talks about the church being Catholic. It's the first time we have the word Catholic in writing. And he was a disciple of John the Apostle. So Jesus guaranteed his church will endure, and actually has endured through the ages. Probably one of the greatest miracles of the Catholic Church is, despite how many people on the outside have tried to destroy it, and how many people on the inside have tried to destroy it, it's still existing. It's the oldest existing government in the world, over 2,000 years old. But interesting enough, the church has had amazing shepherds, great saints that were shepherds. It's had not so amazing shepherds. It's had not so good shepherds, and it's had really, really bad shepherds. And the church, I found, if you study the history of the church, in some of the darkest times, when everything was just seemed to be lost, God raised up some of the greatest and most powerful saints that we have. You know, whenever the church has a problem, say, for example, we have a pope who's weak, usually the bishops are stronger. But when we have problems where the pope is weak, the bishops are weak, the clergy's weak, the laity is lax, and then he raises up someone like St. Vincent Ferrer, who was born in the 1300s. In 1378, there was a schism that divided the church. The Pope was elected in Rome, and the French cardinals in Avignon, they didn't like that selection, so they got together and elected another person. So there were two people claiming to be Pope. And if this wasn't bad enough, in 1409, we had another person claiming to be pope. So there were three people. So the clergy were confused, the laity were confused, and everything became very lax, and people fell into so much error. So this Dominican priest, St. Vincent Ferrer, who was 50 years old at the time, was commissioned by the church to preach. And he preached all over southern Europe. He went to Switzerland, Austria, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Spain. And he was already known for his sanctity. His first miracle was at 5 years old. He began studying theology for the clerical state when he was 8 years old. I mean, this is really an incredible person. He traveled on foot everywhere. He performed incredible miracles. He raised 30 people from the dead. He would go from town to town, always with the bishop's permission, and he would have 10,000 people following him. He always had at least 50 priests to hear confessions of the people that converted. He also had notaries travel with him, because in those days there was a lot of feudal stuff going on, families having vendettas against each other. So he would go there and he'd reconcile these families, and then he'd get it in writing, the peace treaty, and then have it notarized. So it was incredible. It's said that he performed, a conservative estimate would be in those 20 years of his preaching, he performed at least 8 miracles a day, which comes out to about 58,000 miracles during his 20 years of preaching. After he died and they were studying his cause for canonization, they stopped at about 800 miracles. They thought, okay, well, that'll be enough to study. So good shepherds in the church, but also there are good shepherds, men and women who sacrifice their lives for their sheep. They sacrifice their needs for the needs of others. And they literally lay down their life for the sheep. They work to build up the kingdom of God. They give up, money. They give up privacy. They give up sleep, food, comfort. These men and women, they detach themselves from having anything that's really nice. They shepherd their sheep in such an intimate way that they literally take on the smell of the sheep. And these shepherds that I'm talking about, these men and women that care for the sick, the helpless, they carry those who are unable to walk. They spoon feed those who are unable to feed themselves. And they can't even wear nice clothing without being soiled by the body fluids of those they care for. I'm referring to those men and women who are parents. Parents who are the chief shepherds in the world. And without these good shepherds, we wouldn't have the St. Vincent Ferrers. We wouldn't have the ecclesiastical order of the church. They are the foundation of society. The way of the family determines the way of society. Today, especially, whenever I hear the 23rd Psalm, like we sang today in the psalmody, I think of my grandparents. My older brother and I were raised by my grandparents, who in their older age took the responsibility of 2 boys. Our neighbors referred to my brother and I as the Bailey Devils. My grandmother's name was Bailey, and Devils was just like an affectionate nickname they gave us. And I remember one time my brother and I was about 6 years old. We were playing out in the backyard, and this is just what parents go through. And we were playing in the backyard. My brother had a knife in the kitchen. He was sharpening a tree branch into a spear. And I asked, can I help? And he said, no, this is really sharp. You might cut yourself. So he's always looking out for my well-being. So then he finished the spear, and he said, Mike, go stand up against the sheet on the line. There's a sheet hanging there. So I stood there, and he says, spread your arms. And I spread my arms. He said, hold really still. And he threw it, and it hit the sheet next to my head and fell down. And I picked it up, and I walked back over, and I said, try again, Ricky, you missed. So he threw it again, and it hit me in the scalp, but it must have gone under the scalp because it actually was sticking straight out. And I went running in the house, and my grandmother, bless her heart, was taking a much-needed nap. and the door burst open, and I've got the spear in my head. My brother's, crying, very contrite. And that's what she woke up to. So she called our doctor. Our doctor in those days, she came to our homes. And my brother and I were afraid of this lady. She was quite elderly, but she must have worked in the rodeo part-time. Because when she came to give us shots, she would actually chase us around the house and wrestle us down on the ground and vaccinate us. So she came to the house, and we lived in Texas, San Antonio, Texas. She came to the house and took one look at me and then looked at my brother who was crying. And she said, "Mister, you're going to get the electric chair for this." I think she believed that spare the electric chair and spoil the child. But it's the love and guidance of my dear grandparents and the sacrifices they made that put me where I am and who the person I am today. Parents need rest. They need to go away to a quiet place and recharge their batteries. I'm a permanent deacon, as you all know, and I have I'm married, 6 children, 19 grandchildren. I just happen to have pictures if you want to see after Mass. But I remember, as parents, we all know that one place in the house, that inner sanctuary, that sanctuary of repose, the restroom, where parents can get away from everything. And I had my young daughter, I won't mention Maria's name because I don't want to embarrass her. But I had washed my hair and I felt so good, and I got a towel and I was drying my hair, and I looked down and leaves and dirt were falling out onto the ground. And apparently Maria had taken the towel outside and used it as a picnic cloth for her doll tea party, and then dutifully brought it back and hung it up back in the bathroom. But this is what parents go through. And they literally lay down their lives for their sheep. And they need repose. They need solitude. They need to go away by themselves to a deserted place and rest a while. One of the other wonderful places where you can go and be with Jesus and rest a while is to adoration. We're so blessed here. For over 20 years, we have perpetual Eucharistic adoration in our chapel here. Parents, please, if you don't already do a holy hour, make an arrangement. Husbands, watch the children where your wife can go. Parents, get a babysitter so you and your husband and wives can go to adoration. There's a sanctuary where you can come and rest in the Lord. There's a place where you can go away to the Lord and rest, a deserted place where you can be still and hear His voice. Be still and get your spiritual energies recharged. One dear priest of mine, God rest his soul, Father Francis Bagan, he loved perpetual adoration. He says, "I need my radiation therapy." And he would go in front of the Blessed Sacrament. He said that the love that radiates from the Sacred Heart of Jesus, he said, that's my therapy. That's what makes me feel good. That's what gives me the strength to carry on. In today's gospel reading, Jesus looked with pity upon the crowds. I don't know if the apostles had the same feeling when they saw thousands of people waiting for him. They probably had enough foods for themselves. And this incident was the same place where a little later on, Jesus did the miracle of the loaves and the fishes. But Jesus, we can catch a glimpse of his Sacred Heart here where he felt great pity. The devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, especially the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the Most Blessed Sacrament, is not some pious, private devotion. It's actually a deep theological understanding of who Jesus is. That Jesus loves us with a divine love of God the Son, and he loves us with a perfect human love, a perfect human heart with all of its various emotions and virtues. St. Francis of Assisi, we look at him as someone who loved nature, and he did because he loved the God of nature, but he loved the Eucharist. He loved the Eucharist. He loved the church. He said about the Eucharist, he said, "Let all of mankind tremble, let the whole world shake, and the heavens exult." When Christ, the Son of the living God, is present on the altar in the hands of a priest. And he said, admirable heights. So what sublime lowliness, sublime humility, and humble sublimity, that the Son of God, the Lord of the universe, so humbles himself for our salvation that he comes to us under the form of bread. And he says, look at the humility of God and humble yourself before him. So please, when we receive communion, when we go to adoration, we humble ourselves before God and just look at his humility and unite ourselves to Jesus, and he'll refresh us in all of our needs. He'll lead us beside the restful waters. He'll restore our souls. And when he calls us from this world, we will dwell in his house forever.